Okay, welcome class to the lecture series at URP, and we'll be continuing our topic on planning research methods. And in the last lecture, we were talking about the importance of research and the significance of it, and why do we do research, and how it can be used in different aspects, for example, policy making or identifying some problems and potential solution for them. So how do you, the next question arises is how do you start the research? What are the generic kind of processes? Of course, everybody's research will vary depending upon the topic, your advisor, and your own, the researcher's own capabilities. So you may follow a generic, I'll just give you a generic process outline in which you'll be more or less following this same process. So the first thing which comes to your mind is like deciding what to research. What could be the potential topic or the problem that you will be thinking about analyzing or finding a solution for? So that is the phase one of the research, and that is one of the most important, or I would say very time-consuming part, in which students are very they are very much thinking about that. Is this the right topic to choose? Should she or he research on this topic? So what happened is that in this type of situation, it's usually your advisor or your supervisor can help you out because he or she knows about the field and what are the current topics in the field. But it's up to the student that he or she can identify the problem by themselves, and then maybe they can propose how to proceed with that. So the first one is deciding. Then is planning the research. What are you going to be doing now? Okay, we have decided a topic now. So then we are conceptualizing a research. From which angle, which approach, which theoretical framework or theoretical underpinnings you will be using to identify the problem, propose a solution. So first of all, conceptualization, how you're going to be approaching the problem. What are your limits? What are the scope of your study? That is the conceptualization of the research study. Research. Then we will be like, okay, this is a loose kind of framework of research methodology which you will be focusing on resolving a particular problem. Then is like you will be developing a kind of a instrument design, some we also call data collection methods, in which you will be identifying how are you going to be getting, let's say, getting the information about the problem you're seeking to solve. So data collection methods come there. Then is because this is a social science, we always go for more or less sample size or representative of the actual population. You cannot do survey or you cannot collect data from all of the population. So you have to be doing it in you can say some kind of a smaller group called sample, which will represent the whole population. And we will come again to how to identify the sample sizes. We'll come to it again. Then is writing a research proposal, the first part. So, so proposal is not the first part. First, we are thinking about what is the problem you will be looking at, what are the research design, what are the potential data collection methods, identification of sample sizes, and then you're going to be writing a research proposal. So think about it. So to reach research proposal step, you need to have enough literature review done on a particular problem or a phenomena which you will be exploring. Then comes your phase 3, which is conducting, actually doing the research. Everything was before that theoretical and on paper. So now you're going in the field. Now you're going to be collecting the data. Then you're going to be doing the data entry in your particular softwares. Okay. And then producing some kind of analysis and getting some outputs. So that is conducting a research. And then you're going to be writing a research report or research thesis, which will give you can say a reader a material for which they can judge your research. Your committee members, your colleagues, they will read your research reports, also called, like we can call it, thesis, dissertations, even papers. So they are part of writing a research. So this is a very generic, again, another point of view about how you're going to be undertaking the research, like formulating the research problem, funding, which we call identification of problem, problem statement, then is literature review, hypothesis, research design, and data analysis and interpretations, and then key findings. So and that is another way of visualizing how you're going to be conducting your whole research process. So, this is, some people call it as a cyclic process, in which unless you identify and evaluate a problem very comprehensively, unless you don't provide a very good solution for it, you may need to do the research again. Okay. So for the process, any question till now? Yes, Rida. Yes, Rida. Okay. Anyone else? Can you hear me? Rizwan?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Yes, Rida, you want to say something? Please.
Yes sir, आवाज आ रही है?
जी जी जी.
अच्छा सर, वो पिछली स्लाइड में एक मैंने वर्ड पढ़ा था, लिटरेचर सर्वे लिखा हुआ था, वो थोड़ा एक्सप्लेन कर दें कि वो क्या चीज होती है, मतलब सर्वे का तो पता है, लिटरेचर का.
Yes, yes, sir. I think this is literature review. I think this is a typo, basically. It should be literature review. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other question? Okay, the first problem which comes to, which first part of the problem, we will be having a whole lecture on problem identification, is the identification. This is just generic inputs to this problem is like, often students come to me with how can I say, yes, with a solution. Like, for example, I'll give you an example. Okay, climate change. Okay, sir, green infrastructure is or a green city concept, green buildings is a very good way to tackle the climate change. Okay, I agree with you. That is a solution for it, but that is not the problem identification. That is not a problem. So some students, they are trying to do kind of a reverse engineering. Rather than approaching what are the potential problems available or which is apparent in the community, in the society, you should aim to solve them first, rather than employing some different kind of concepts. Like this will be employing a kind of a green infrastructure to counteract or mitigate the climate change impacts. But that is the wrong approach. The main problem is climate change is happening. Okay, what are the potential impacts and how those impacts can be minimized? So for the problem is identifying of those climate change impacts, and then maybe depending upon the impact, we'll be discussing or analyzing what are the potential solutions available to the community and which is the best or the optimum solution to rectify or mitigate this problem. So identification of problems remains a very important part of the study. Depending upon the problem statement or the you can, I would say, objectives will be defined based on the problem you have identified, and those objectives will then guide you to develop the instruments for data collection. And those instruments or that type of data which you have collected will then, depending on the data type, you will choose what kind of data analysis technique you would be employing, or you can, let's say, you'll be testing that data to support that is this solution viable for a particular problem. I hope you understand me. Any question till now regarding problem? Anyone? Yes, Rida?
सर मुझे थोड़ी कंफ्यूजन थी, ये जो सेकंड पॉइंट आपने बताया, जस्टिफाई अ प्रॉब्लम, और सर उसके बाद सजेस्ट अ नीड टू स्टडी इट, तो सर इसमें ये एक ही चीज नहीं आ जाएगी कि हम जस्टिफाई भी इसीलिए करेंगे, मतलब अपना जो प्रॉब्लम स्टेटमेंट है उसको बताने के लिए कि इसकी क्या इम्पोर्टेंस है, तो सर नेक्स्ट जो स्टेप है वो भी वही चीज नहीं है?
Okay, okay, I got your point. So basically, what happens is that once you identify a problem, then of course you are going to providing some kind of rationale, some justification of your study. But then you are going to be assessing that is that problem, is that problem valid for all the communities of Pakistan, or is it for the particular community which you are involved? For example, okay, I'll give you an example. Uh, Urban growth. Okay, no, urban growth is okay. Let's say I would suggest urban flooding. Okay, so urban flooding is a problem. So is that problem valid for all the cities of Pakistan or only few cities of Pakistan? So depending on the problem, you need to justify the scope of your study and suggest that is that study needed in this particular community or not. You understand my point, Rida? Rida?
यस सर, मतलब इसमें हम लोग एक तो सर इसमें बताएंगे कि हमारी टारगेट पॉपुलेशन क्या है, और फिर हम स्कोप मतलब बताएंगे कि हमारी जो रिसर्च है वो कितनी वाइड है, किस चीज पे अप्लाई हो रही है, इस तरह से सर।
Yes,
ठीक है सर।
precisely. Now, depending upon the audience, another approach is that is that solution? Is it for the community? Is it for the institution? Is it for the scientists? Is it for the industry? Okay, so depending upon your problem, your approach, you need to identify or limit yourself that okay, I will be providing solution that will only be feasible for this kind of audience. So that is another thing which have to be kept in mind. Okay, I'll move on. So another process, reviewing literature. Okay, so since you have been, I think, 2 semesters already in the course in this degree, so I think you already know what is books and journals and how to approach or locate these published resources. So these are out there, and more or less you might have got some kind of ideas how to do a bit of a literature review. So we'll have a whole lecture on conducting literature review. Then is like I would suggest organizing your resources. Once you download so many papers, you don't know how to handle those, how to analyze them, or how to summarize them together. Many students, they are very good in reviewing only one paper, but synthesizing the literature into one paragraph. You have read 20 papers on one topic. How are you going to be relating those papers all together in one paragraph? So synthesizing that has remained a problem for the students. I've seen it, I have observed it. Doing a literature review of review of one paper is very easy, but doing a literature of because in your research there will be a lot of material available to you, so you are going to be organizing it. So one of the problem, there are many different ways to organize your literature, and one of those is creating kind of a literature map in which you'll be kind of developing a conceptual framework in which you'll be linking different aspects, different phenomena. Like for example, I will give you an example again, coming back to the examples. Problem is urban flooding. So what are the potential literature which is linking to it? Number one, urban planning literature. Number two, climate change science literature is there. Institutional frameworks are there. Impacts of urban flooding on communities are there. So one problem like urban planning, it will have links to other different concepts or different phenomena. So creating some kind of conceptual framework can help you realize that what sort of literature review you should be conducting. But again, this is a exercise I'll be conducting in the class in the next coming lectures. Okay, we've talked about summarizing. Okay. Then is your statement, purpose of statement, also called objectives sometimes. So what sort of purpose you're going to be using? For example, are you defining some kind of a research questions or a hypothesis that can be quantitatively analyzed? For example, I'm hypothesizing that Islamabad and Lahore are different with respect to socio-economic conditions. The socio-economic characteristics of Islamabad and Lahore, they vary a lot. So this is kind of a quantitative statement in which I would be collecting the data from Islamabad, then I will be collecting the data from Lahore, and then I will be kind of doing some kind of statistical test to justify or to analyze that is there a difference between Islamabad or Lahore citizens. So this is kind of a quantitative statement. In terms of qualitative statement, now climate change impacts, for example, now these impacts are, it can be quantitative, I mean it can be in terms of statistics, but more or less the impacts are can be judged qualitatively as well, like damage to the property. Of course we can have again kind of quantitative mechanisms are there, but now for the time being we are just analyzing, or I would say uh, finding out different sectors on which there is the impacts of climate change. So again, you'll be defining that. For example, let's say let me put it this way. In this statement, you're building up a theory. Like uh, how can I say a theory? Okay, let me say there is a theory of Friedman theory in which the core is, if it's a theory of regional development, your core is more developed than your surroundings. So that is a kind of a qualitative statement. So you are going to be justifying, or you're going to be analyzing that theory, or you're going to be proposing your own theory. That can be a part of your objectives or your purpose of statement. So clear? Any question?
ये last वाली बात कहेंगे.
Okay. So purpose of statement is maybe you're going to be giving a theory. Okay. First of all, do not think of this as in terms of data analysis, quantitative, qualitative data analysis. In terms of qualitative, you're going to be developing a theory or a phenomena. You can just link those phenomena, or you can say identify some linkages between different concepts. So kind of a idea generation, theory generation, conceptual framework generation, that can be a part. Like for example, I'm giving you a framework for analyzing certain problem. So you just make a different kind of a flowchart. You link those flowchart and said that to solve this problem, you should follow this framework. Like kind of coming up with the best way for institutions, coming up with the organogram, for example. Like these are linkages that this is how the problem can be solved by having such a kind of institutional hierarchy or a structure. So coming up with this kind of stuff is called qualitative or phenomena, which you can have some kind of development. Again, when I'll go into development of objectives, we'll get more clarity. This is just an introduction for that. Okay, then is data collection. Well, most of you might have already done your thesis or your final year projects in your bachelor's. In one way or another, you have already collected some kind of data. So you might know that to fulfill this or complete this final year project, we need this kind of data. To complete my thesis, I need this kind of data. So data collection, it will vary depending on your objectives, depending upon your sample framework, or you can say your sample size. It will vary a lot. Then is data plan instrument. How will we, like for example, are you going to be analyzing it with respect to maybe questionnaire, or maybe you are going to be employing key checklists, key informant interviews. So these are some different instruments to collect the data. Obtain permissions. Now this is a very important part. You might not have covered it in your bachelor's or somewhere, but in your postgraduate and your doctoral researches, it is very integral to obtain permissions or consent from the interviewee from the respondent, and you must get it sometimes, depending, if especially if your research is related to directly to, for example, medical sciences, or having some kind of confidentiality between you and the respondent. So you need to have these kind of formations. So sometimes you kind of obtain some kind of ethical certificate that my research is free from harm, or we did not use any animals or, for example, human beings in our testing. So that is in social sciences, it is, I mean, it is important, although it's very important. We are in social sciences, a verbal consent or a generic consent on, because they are filling the questionnaire by themselves, they are providing you information, so they have already given you kind of a verbal consent. But you need to be clear with the respondents that you are collecting this data for this particular purpose. So most of you in your questionnaire, you might write kind of a disclaimer or a purpose of this research study on your top of the questionnaire, just to let the respondents know that what is the purpose of your study. Okay, then again, gather information. Okay, analyzing now. This analyzing your data will ultimately depend upon the type of the data you have collected in the field. What kind of data? Is it 1 to 5 Likert scale? Is it qualitative data? Is it quantitative data? So depending upon the data you have achieved and your research objective, you will be using different kind of data analysis techniques. Again, that might even be statistical analysis, that might be even simple descriptive analysis, simple graphs, frequencies, or it can be just a argumentative kind of a debate in which you'll be analyzing your data. And then is reporting your research. Who are you? Which type of audience will be reading your report? What is the structure of the formatting of the report? And how much is the accurate your report is representing your analysis? So ethical considerations, of course, I've talked about it one way or another, that we should be right of participants or respondents. When visiting institutions, you need to have proper clearances, and if you're obtaining the data, and you need to be ethically sure that this data is properly acknowledged from where you got it, and you have the rights basically to use this data to publish your research. This is especially true for the data you obtain from the institutions or the companies or from the industry. So you need to have rights or permissions. Even replicating or reproducing a figure or data, for example, data figure, you need to have permissions. And of course, research your findings honestly and fully. You don't need to kind of give one side of the picture. You as a researcher should be justifying both sides. You should not just be blaming on the institutions or the public. You are trying to find a solution, or you have to remain neutral, by the way. So to obtain what is the particular problem and how it can be more efficiently resolved. Okay, this is another kind of a loose checklist in which you can use in identifying your research. Some ethical considerations, and that is are you doing the research on the right path or not? So this is another one of the checklists. It was in the end of a book. I'm not sure if I referred that book. Okay, I'll refer that book in the presentation, and then you can use this checklist to identify that is your research ethically correct, ethically transparent, and are you approaching the problem or the phenomena you're going to be researching on, is it like all the objectives you have formulated, have you achieved those objectives or not? So again, this checklist can really help you out in research proposal. Okay, any questions till now? Yes, is one, please.
अच्छा सर, डेटा कलेक्शन की बात होती थी तो मैं उस लिहाज से पूछना चाह रहा था कि हम किस टाइप ऑफ डेटा को लेके एक ऑथेंटिक कहते हैं। जिस तरह एक हो गया हमारा लाइक जिन्होंने पब्लिश किया डेटा है, ठीक है, लेकिन इसके अलावा जर्नल्स हो गए वगैरह, रिपोर्ट होगी, लेकिन ऑनलाइन वगैरह यानी वो नेट पे हम कौन सी डेटा को ऑथेंटिक कह सकते हैं? हम हर वेबसाइट को तो नहीं ऑथेंटिक कह सकते कि इसने जो डेटा प्रोवाइड किए कि उसके ये लाइक ऑथेंटिसिटी है प्रॉपर।
Okay, we are thinking from the aspect of from a developing country nation, right? So we are thinking that maybe that institutions have not provided or they don't have a reliable data. But as a planning student, I know we have to start from somewhere, and the data is a very big limitation in our field. And what we usually do is that we ask our students to go for the primary data collection by themselves. So you as a student will go in the field and collect the data and do the data entry and create your own database to evaluate, or you can say again to analyze the data to solve a problem. So of course I would suggest go for a primary data. Then there are some very good databases available on internet. For example, some papers, not all papers, some paper even when uh, their paper is published, they also publish their data sets. So you can use their data sets and you can reproduce the results which have been reported in the journal article or not. So those databases are also available and they are reliable because the data they have, the paper they have published, the data you analyzed are the same, or are they giving the same outputs? So
So can you
judging
name
about the
them?
GG.
I mean, can you name them?
Okay, there are some journals. I don't remember the name. The name of, I think the name of the journal is data sets or data and policy. There's some different journals. They just publish the data sets. And even some journal, for example, any journal article, when for example this one you're going to be analyzing, you're doing your research, when you're trying to publish a paper, the journal office will ask you, hey, do you want to publish your own data sets? So if you're confident, yes, you can say, okay, here are the data sets that is freely available on the internet. And other than that, of course, government institutions, their data sets are, well, it will depend upon, you might agree or not agree, but we have to start somewhere. And more or less, as a planner, we always go with the government sources. So we need to rely on the data. I hope you're clear this one. But there is no way to, of course. Okay, one more thing. Sorry, I forgot. Checking, there is a test called reliability, data reliability tests. In statistics, there are some tests. For example, for example, is one you collected data from the field and you provided me the data set. So this is the data I collected. I can easily put some kind of data reliability test from statistical software, and they can help me assess that how much percentage of response data is reliable, how much is fake data. So there are tests available on softwares. They can identify if the data is fake. So that is one way. You got my point? Is one कुछ clear हुआ?
हाँ सर, मुझे अच्छा क्लियर, थैंक यू।
Okay. Yeah. Yes, Samad, please.
Sir, is it possible to conduct a research-based study without identifying a problem?
No, that's a very good question, Samad. I've not thought about it. But usually, all the studies in social science, at least, there are two kind of approaches basically: inductive research and deductive research. So in deductive research, you see a problem and you find a solution. The other one is inductive research. You just try to observe different things which is happening around the world, and then you formulate a theory. That's called inductive research. So more or less, you have to be circling around. You have to limit yourself. So without identifying a problem, I would say would be very meaningless or kind of a directionless. I would say a directionless research will be conducted. So I think, personally, I think problem is necessary. But of course, I have your question is very valid. Of course, there might be some theories or some researches conducted which have not focused on problem. But in today's society, I think problem is a must. Yes, Samad.
सर अगर एक एग्जांपल ले लेके मैं अगर रिसर्च करना चाहता हूँ कि कितने लोग ऐसे होंगे जो अपना जो रिसर्च एनालिसिस है वो एसपीएसएस के थ्रू करते हैं, तो इस तरह का अगर कोई टॉपिक हो सर जिसमें कोई प्रॉब्लम ना हो या इसमें कोई कंपैरेटिव टाइप की कोई स्टडी हो,
So
तो ये
problem
इसको
is there.
रिसर्च कह सकते हैं आप?
Okay, ये problem. Okay, problem को आप समझते हैं. There is like a genuine problem. No, I'm called हम इसको कहते हैं hypothesis. I think you have heard of the word hypothesis. Like आपने अभी hypothesize किया है कि how many आपका hypothesis ये होगा many people are not using SPSS in their research work. Yeah, people, or for example planning students, most of my planning students use SPS as a research. So ये आपका एक thesis, एक hypothesis है. इसको आपने टेस्ट करना है. उसके लिए आपने क्या करना है? डेटा कलेक्शन करेंगे, एनालिसिस करेंगे और एनालिसिस करके आइडेंटिफाई करने. प्रॉब्लम बेसिकली क्या है? ये जो आप बात करेंगे ये बेसिकली सोल्यूशन है. प्रॉब्लम क्या है कि लोग एसपीएसएस यूज नहीं करते ये पर्टिकुलर प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करने के लिए. दैट इज अ प्रॉब्लम. उसको टेस्ट करने के लिए आप डेटा कलेक्ट करते हैं. So back end पे if you go back and back, you reach a particular problem जिसका ये solution है. You got my point, Samad?
Yes sir, thank you.
Yes. Any other question? So okay, I would suggest now आप लोगों को कि
I wanted to ask.
Yes, Saleh.
Sorry, interrupt you. But I wanted to ask, is there like a word count कुछ होता है thesis के ऊपर? जैसे PhD के thesis में like you have I think 100,000 words कोई minimum होता है something like that. तो उसमें से do we have a minimum for our master's thesis and
No.
like sorry another question HCC की I saw website पे there's के the minimum time required for your thesis is like you need to finish it like the minimum आप time ले सकते हैं वो मतलब 3 months तक you have to push it and उससे ज़्यादा भी लोग like extend मतलब your thesis can go up to like obviously 2 years or whatever but like the minimum time in which you can finish it is 3 years so like is there a policy in NUST के specific के कितने time में पढ़ना होता है thesis?
Okay. So first question is your word limit. No, there is no word limit in thesis, dissertation. Yes, there is a word limit in paper writing. The paper is with up to certain words, which journal article you need to publish. It has restriction. Most of the journals has restriction. They publish around 6,000 to 10,000 within it. So I would always suggest my student to go for 8,000 words. Okay. But for thesis and dissertations, no, there is no word limit. But yes, there is issue of plagiarism. That HEC has issue with plagiarism. It should be less than I think 18 or 17%, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 19. But it is there. So plagiarism is there. And then is your thesis. You're talking about HEC or any organization in the world. Basically, they focus on degree. The degree should be can be completed with minimum 1.5 years and maximum of 4 years. So that limit is there. Okay, regarding your thesis or your NUST. Okay, generally, if you are following a timeline, I need to recheck with the establishment. But the thing you are proposing, there is a you have to provide TH forms. TH form, there is a kind of forms in which there are 4 forms, 1, 2, 3, 4. And after submitting form 1, you need to have a gap of two weeks. Then you can submit TH2, not before that. TH2 and TH3, it should have a minimum of 2 to 3 weeks. And TH3, because once you submit your final thesis, that thesis or your presentation date, that will be circulated 1 or 2 weeks prior to your defense to all of the students, all of the institute. So they need 2 weeks. So yes, more or less, if we are you're saying that we are very quick, for example. So yes, 2 or 3 months are minimum, but it's not written anywhere. The institution's formalities make it more than 3 months. So Salia, I think clear हुआ आपको?
यस सर। और सर मैंने ये पूछना था, हम मतलब कंट्री में कहीं पे भी अपनी रिसर्च कंडक्ट कर सकते हैं ना, लाइक could be any city, anywhere, right?
Yes, of course, national institute university, so national anywhere in Pakistan, anywhere. For example, some international researches, for example, many research in developed countries, they are conducting researches in developing countries or Africa or Asia even. They are not working on. So I don't know how NUST will support you, but you are also allowed to research out of Pakistan even, if you can.
Sir, is that allowed?
Yes, that is allowed. Why it's not allowed? Your research
So
is basically, जी.
तो अगर कोई बाहर जाके करे, लाइक तो फिर हाउ डू दे मैनेज देयर, लाइक जो उन्होंने अपने डिफेंस देने होते हैं, या जो भी उनके मंथली या वीकली जो वो होती है असेसमेंट होती है?
ओके, दैट जो आपने एवरी 2 वीक्स, अभी तो खैर कोविड की वजह से हमें रिस्ट्रिक्शन कम करती हैं, बट एवरी मंथ में आपने 2 विजिट लॉग जमा करवाने होते हैं, उसको हम कहते हैं. So you need to be depending upon your advisor, you can email them, you can have an online meeting and give a progress, and then they will sign your form that yes, this student is doing research. If consecutive, I think 3 or 4 visit logs are not submitted to the establishment branch, then that student is kind of given warning, and then there is registration, or like it will be suspended. But I've never seen a student who has gone outside to conduct their research, because you're not supported by the university. I think only 50,000 rupees is there for financial support for research for MS students.
और सर जो थियोरेटिकल जो होती है रिसर्च, could we do we have to take like tangible issues जैसे होते हैं, like sometimes people take like I don't know, like if this was discussed, I think during when I was applying to NUST, I was having a discussion, आप भी थे उसमें, कि about Mars पे someone was, either you or Sir Wahid were conducting a research or was doing some paperwork on Mars पे about urban planning related something. So are we allowed to like go into really theoretical topics?
Yes, you're allowed. You're allowed everything in research. You're allowed. Yes. Any other thing? Any other question? Yes. Okay, class. Then we will resume around then 6:30 for another lecture. Let's have a Maghrib break. Thank you.